The market didn't just buzz. It breathed. It throbbed like a living heartbeat under the noon sun. Pans clashing, vendors shouting, children darting between stalls like sparks breaking from a fire. Smoke curled upward from grilling meat. Spices floated through the dusty heat, mixing with sweat, laughter, and struggle. Nothing about this place was staged or polished. This was Burkina Faso in its rawest truth. And into this chaos slipped a single, quiet sedan. No sirens, no flashing lights, no roaring engines announcing power. Just one man stepping into the marketplace like he was returning home. President Ibrahim Traoré. But not as a ruler, as a son of the soil. 2 guards followed, alert but respectful, while his other security dissolved into the crowd like dissolving shadows. Ibrahim greeted farmers with warm handshakes, asked old traders about their cotton harvest, lifted a child's chin and told him to stay brave, stay hopeful. He listened more than he spoke, because this was the nation he fought for, resilient, proud, unbroken despite storms that tried to swallow it. But then, his stride faltered. A melody, a faint, trembling melody, drifted from the corner of a faded fabric stall. It was thin, fragile, like a thread holding someone's life together. He turned. There, against a cracked sun-bleached wall, sat a woman in torn clothes, hands shaking around a rusted tin cup, skin burned by hunger, eyes hollow yet strangely familiar. She hummed the tune again, and Ibrahim's heart stopped. It wasn't just a sound. It was a memory, braided hair swaying as she worked, warm millet rising from her wrapper, lullabies whispered in more on nights he couldn't sleep. He had been 4 when she disappeared. He was 38 now, and yet, that sound, that song, dragged him back through decades like lightning splitting open the sky. "Excellency, is something wrong?" one guard whispered, but Ibrahim couldn't answer. His breath was gone. The woman lifted her head, sunlight sliding over her face, and the crowded marketplace fell silent inside his mind. Because he saw it. The scar above her wrist, the one he used to trace with tiny fingers. The way she touched her collarbone, her nervous habit when thinking. And the song, the baobab song. His lips parted, trembling. "Mama," her humming died mid-note. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with the shock of seeing a ghost in broad daylight. Ibrahim raised a hand to calm his guards. "Stand easy," he whispered, his gaze never leaving hers. For a moment the world blurred. Vendors, children, noise. Everything softened into nothing. Only one face remained clear. The face of the woman he buried in his memory, yet carried in his heart like a wound that never healed. And then he saw it. Her kindness, still alive even in ruin. Because with her last small piece of bread, she broke it in half, and gave it to a starving man beside her. That was her way. Even when she had nothing, she gave. Tears burned behind Ibrahim's eyes. All these years, he fought battles in grand halls, negotiated with powers that wanted his land, his people, his dignity. But she fought only to survive. He stepped forward. His guards tensed but obeyed. Ibrahim lowered himself into the dirt beside her. Dust clinging to his knees, sweat mixing with the earth he fought for. In more, his voice cracked. "Excuse me, Mama. May I sit?" Her eyes snapped toward him. Suspicion etched deep from years of betrayal. To be noticed meant danger. Yet something in his face, in his trembling voice, stopped her from turning away. "Do you remember the little boy who sang the baobab song with you?" Her hand rose, trembled, paused midair, afraid the vision might vanish if she touched it. Her lips parted. "My son." The words broke her like a storm. They broke him too. Their hands met, her thin fingers folding into his calloused palm. The touch was lightning. Years shattered. Truth returned. "I never stopped looking for you," she sobbed. He swallowed a lifetime of pain. "And I never stopped needing you." For a moment there were no guards, no president, no power, only a son kneeling in the dust, holding the hand of the woman who had once been his entire world. She whispered through tears, "After your father died, I tried. I tried to protect you, but in 91, the drought burned everything. Our land, our home, our future. Her voice trembled as she continued, but after the drought, after Kudugu turned to dust, we had nothing. Nothing but hope and my child's name. She wiped her eyes with the back of her trembling hand. I walked to this city with only hope in my palms. And hope is a hard thing to carry when your stomach is empty. She told him of days spent carrying water until her shoulders bled, of washing floors that belonged to families who never learned her name, of begging landlords for mercy when the rent was 3 days late and hunger was 3 weeks old. Then her voice sank, quiet, painful. One employer asked me for something I refused to give, something no woman should be asked. Ibrahim's jaw tightened. I said no. So they threw me out, and after that, every door closed. Her eyes glistened, but she kept talking, because truth, once it begins to surface, cannot be swallowed again. Ibrahim's breath shook. What did you do then, Mama? Her grip tightened around his fingers with a strength that startled him. I fought, she whispered, every single day. But then, the social workers came. The world around them seemed to dim. They said they would take you for a little while, just until I found work again. A better family could give you food, give you sleep, give you safety. Her chest heaved. I swore I would come back for you. Her voice broke like a branch snapping. But weeks became months, and months became years. Her tears fell onto the dust between them. I searched every school. I asked every neighbor. But the family they gave you to moved away. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell anyone. Ibrahim lowered his forehead against hers, holding her face with both hands as if steadying the past. I remembered you, Mama. Every song, every story. I carried you inside me when the world tried to break me. She closed her eyes, tears leaking down the corners. One night, she whispered, I saw a television in a shop window. I saw a young captain with fire in his eyes. My heart froze, because I knew that fire. It came from me. Her voice shook. But how could a woman with a rusted cup call out to a man followed by soldiers? I feared. You would hate me for losing you. Hate you? Ibrahim's voice cracked with raw pain. He shook his head violently. You gave me life. Everything I am was born from your hands. Her trembling fingers lifted and traced the scar above his brow. The scar she had once kissed when he fell running through their farm as a child. My beautiful boy, she murmured, rocking the words like a prayer she had memorized in her grief. My beautiful boy. The marketplace had begun to slow. Whispers rippled outward. Heads turned. People gasped, recognizing the uniform, the posture. The man kneeling in the dirt with tears on his face. The president, crying like a child in his mother's arms. But Ibrahim didn't care. He pulled her into him, breathing in the faint scent of shea butter, the same scent that had clung to her wrapper when he was small. He held her as though trying to gather every lost year into his embrace. She wept apologies into his chest. He answered each one with a whisper. You planted everything inside me. The songs, the courage, the ancestors who walk with me. You are the reason I stand today. Her lips pressed against his shoulder as she whispered, and you became everything I prayed for. Her hands moved to her neck, fingers trembling as she untied a frayed leather pouch. The knots were stiff with age, but she tugged them patiently until it came loose. Inside were 2 tiny items, a faded ribbon, and a small white button. I carried these from your baby shirt, she said, voice breaking into a smile. So I would never forget your laugh, even if the world forgot mine. Ibrahim's breath shuddered. He folded her hand gently around the pouch. Then let's never forget again. But before the moment could settle, a camera flash exploded in the air. Someone shouted his title. Another yelled for a selfie. Within seconds, phones rose like a forest of glowing eyes. The crowd swelled. Feet shuffled. Elbows pushed. A child stumbled. A teenager leaned dangerously close to him, and the marketplace began to collapse into chaos. The fragile magic around them shattered like thin glass. "Sir, we need to move." Captain Adra's voice was steady, but his eyes were sharp, scanning every twitch in the crowd. People weren't just gathering anymore. They were swelling, pushing, surging. Heat wrapped around them like a tightening rope. Whispers turned into rising waves of excitement and confusion. A child's cry cut through the noise. Somewhere, metal clattered. The wall of people pressed closer. Ibrahim felt his mother's frail fingers clutch his sleeve, small, trembling, terrified. Captain Adra stepped closer. "Mr. President, her safety is now at risk." Ibrahim's chest tightened painfully. Every part of him wanted to stay right there, kneeling in the dirt, holding the only piece of his childhood that had returned to him. But for the first time in his life, duty and love were not enemies. They were the same. "5 more minutes," he whispered, his voice cracking. "No less." Adra nodded once, sharp, respectful. The advance team moved ahead, clearing a path not with guns or force, but with calm hands and steady voices. "Please step back. Give space. Someone will fall. Move gently, brothers." Ibrahim cupped his mother's face again, forcing the roaring world to fade for just a single breath. "Mama, will you trust me now?" Her eyes, wet with tears, searched his as if looking for the boy she once knew. And she found him. "I trust you, my son." Another camera flash exploded, bright, electric, hitting Ibrahim's shoulder. He instinctively shielded his mother. That was enough. The guards closed in instantly, forming a living wall around them. Not pushing, not shouting, just defending with unwavering strength. They moved slowly, steadily, carving a calm corridor through the storm of bodies. People reached out to touch him. Some cried his name. Others simply stared, stunned to see the president guiding a fragile old woman like she was the most precious person in the nation. And she was. At the end of the street, a plain pickup waited, engine humming low. His mother was guided inside with the gentleness of someone carrying a sacred relic. Ibrahim climbed in beside her, pulling the door shut. The roar of the market vanished. Silence held them like a blanket. She leaned against him, exhausted but safe. That evening, after hours on the road, they arrived at a quiet private clinic. No security banners, no official symbols. Just light, air, and peace. Dr. Aminata Sawadogo, a woman with warm eyes and steady hands, examined her. "Dehydration, anemia, severe exhaustion," she murmured. "She needs food, rest, and patience." Ibrahim nodded, refusing to leave her side. His uniform jacket hung over a cheap plastic chair. He sat in silence, watching her sleep, memorizing the rise and fall of her fragile breath. He didn't sleep, not even for a moment. The next morning, sunlight spilled into the room. He spoke softly. "Mama, you can stay with me in the residence. Or, if you'd prefer, we can find you a place of your own. Whatever you want, I will make it happen." She touched the leather pouch at her chest, her old memories. She shook her head gently. "My son, the palace may be yours, but I want a door I can open with my own hands." Her words sliced into him, not with pain, but with truth. He smiled, nodding. "Then we'll build that door, exactly the way you want." The next 3 days changed her life, and he changed them quietly, without the government, without headlines, from his own savings, through trusted friends who would never speak a word. Day 1. She rested in the clinic, her body drinking in the care it had been denied for decades. Day 2. Ibrahim received a set of keys. A modest apartment in Sector 15. Her name hidden. Her location known only to a handful. Day 3. Security but gentle. A weekly nurse. A simple emergency phone beside her bed. 2 plainclothes officers stationed down the street, close enough to protect, far enough to let her breathe. The apartment itself was kept simple. No luxury, no gold, no symbols of power. Just warmth. The fridge filled slowly with millet, fish, greens, mangoes, fresh bread. In the small garden, a patch of soil was cleared. His mother knelt, placing mint and basil seeds into the earth with tender fingers. Sunlight danced across her hands as she patted the soil. Her smile was small but powerful, the smile of a woman reclaiming life after decades of hunger. Before she moved in, Ibrahim walked through the space alone. He checked every window, every lock, every shutter. He brushed the backs of chairs, the wooden table, the bed frame, as if making sure each object promised to protect her. "This place must feel warm," he whispered to his aide. "Not like a safe house. Like her home." He called Tanti Mariam, a widow with gentle eyes who lived nearby. Not a guard, not an official, just a kind neighbor who always had tea simmering on her stove. His mother stepped into her new home that same day. She touched the doorway softly, as if greeting it like an old friend. Each evening, Ibrahim arrived quietly. No motorcade, no titles, no cameras, just a sun slipping through the night to see his mother. First she rested, her strength fragile, her voice breaking as she told him pieces of her survival. But by the second week, her cheeks glowed, her voice deepened, her laughter returned. On the 10th night, she took his arm and guided him to the kitchen. "Let me cook for you at least once," she smiled. He raised both hands. "I surrender, Mama." For the first time in decades, she cooked for her son. Steam rising from 2 bowls, laughter threading between memories, tears appearing when old stories reopened old wounds. Slowly, piece by piece, she came back to herself. One morning, he found her slipping bread into an elderly neighbor's hand. "Mama, you must rest," he pleaded. "I cannot eat while they go hungry," she replied firmly. "My belly cannot be full when theirs are empty." That same day, he opened a quiet trust fund in her name. She held the papers, smiling. "I will not waste it," she whispered, and she didn't. But what she did next shocked everyone. She lived simply, almost too simply for a woman whose son now governed a nation. She kept her clothes folded in neat piles, her pots washed before dawn, her window cracked open to let the morning birdsong in. But every time she set a plate of food before him, she would brush his shoulder and whisper, "At last, I can mother you again." Those 6 words healed Ibrahim more than any applause, any medal, or any victory ever had. They stitched something inside him that had once felt permanently torn. But cities never stay quiet for long. Whispers became waves. A single photo of Ibrahim kneeling in the market, his mother's weathered hand resting on his cheek, escaped into the world. It traveled through radio stations, through neighborhood gossip, through sermons as preachers retold the scene like a living parable. Elders nodded slowly when they heard it. "This is leadership," they said. "A man who kneels before he commands." Within 6 months, her apartment was no longer just a home. It became something else entirely, a sanctuary for the forgotten. Every Wednesday, her door opened to women with tired eyes and wounded hearts. A widow gripping an eviction notice like it was the last piece of her life. A teenage mother holding her child in faded cloth. A factory worker with swollen feet. A grandmother too proud to beg but too hungry to sleep. And Ibrahim's mother welcomed each of them like daughters returning home after a long exile. She always began the same way, not by speaking, but by listening. When others rushed to give advice, she waited. When others judged, she simply understood. One afternoon, a street vendor appeared at her door. Her palms were bruised, her voice thin with exhaustion. She was too proud to beg, too desperate to pay her medical bills. Ibrahim's mother didn't hesitate. She poured hibiscus tea into mismatched cups and sat with her at the wooden table. The same table Ibrahim had once checked with shaking hands, making sure it was steady enough for her new life. Then she listened, patiently, fully, deeply. After listening, she acted. She suggested a childcare rotation so one mother could finally sleep through the night. She connected others with vendors who paid fair prices instead of exploiting hunger. She even walked beside a young widow to the social services office, refusing to let her face the cold machinery of bureaucracy alone. Day after day, her kitchen table became more than a table. It became a refuge, a place of second chances, a place where women arrived in despair but left with dignity. And slowly, the neighborhood stopped using her name. They called her only Mama. One evening, over a simple meal of stew and soup, she told Ibrahim softly, "I don't want anyone to feel as lost as I once did." Her health improved as her purpose deepened. Her steps grew firmer. Her shoulders lifted. Her eyes carried a new fire. At her next checkup, Dr. Aminata smiled warmly. "Food and medicine heal the body," she said. "But purpose heals the soul faster than anything." Ibrahim knew she was right, and without telling her, he began to carry every story from her table straight into his cabinet meetings. IDs denied, clinics closing too early, evictions, corruption, neglect. He laid her handwritten notes, small and careful, before his ministers. Then he spoke. "Economic growth means nothing if the people holding this nation together are being torn apart." The finance minister frowned. Numbers were stubborn. Budgets were rigid. But Ibrahim didn't argue with numbers. Instead, he read 3 stories aloud. Real voices, real hunger, real pain. And slowly, change began. Heavy checkmark extended clinic hours. Heavy checkmark emergency rent funds. Heavy checkmark mobile ID teams traveling to markets and mosques. Heavy checkmark a hotline for single mothers. Heavy checkmark protection for widows from predatory landlords. But Ibrahim drew a clear line. Her care is not a state expense. Her safety is the country's duty. Everything else is mine. He never once spoke her name publicly. He protected her anonymity like a secret treasure. Yet her spirit shaped every word he spoke to his people. In her small kitchen, she smiled quietly at the stove whenever the radio delivered his speeches about family, mercy, and community strength. She never said it aloud, but pride glowed in her eyes. And then, her story traveled. Across neighborhoods, across villages, across borders. Families began searching for each other. Through schools, through churches, through mosques. Through the new miracle of social media, mothers found children, brothers found sisters, fathers returned home after decades. These were not political stories. They were stories of persistence, of healing, of love fighting against time. The woman who once begged in the dust was now called the mother of the community, and the president who once knelt for her hand now ruled with a calmer heart, one shaped daily by her resilience. The day the elders came. One quiet evening, the elders of the neighborhood arrived at her door. There was no ceremony, no cameras, no announcements, just reverence. They placed a white scarf across her shoulders, a symbol of purity, respect, and honor. Their voices trembled as they blessed her in more. "You are Mama to us all." Ibrahim bowed his head. Then he knelt, just as he had knelt the day he found her in the dust. Tears gathered in his throat, a son's promise. Later, as he walked her back inside, he whispered, "Mama, you taught me that true leadership begins not with power, but with humility and love. I will never forget where I came from." She squeezed his hand firmly, her voice warm, steady, and full of wisdom. "Good. Then keep walking toward your people, and don't forget dinner on Wednesday." He laughed softly, kissed her forehead, and stepped out into the quiet street. No convoy, no sirens, no flashing lights, just a son walking home. Because true leadership is not measured by titles or speeches. It is measured by humanity. A nation heals when a leader remembers his roots, when sons honor their mothers, when families rebuild what hardship once tore apart. And no matter how far life separates us, forgiveness is possible. Reconciliation is possible. Love can rebuild anything. Anything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love, if it made you believe in humanity again, then like, share and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but to spread the message. Love, humility, and courage can rebuild what the world tried to destroy.